Hello, fellow detectives. Welcome to Unlocked, the official podcast for all things Nancy Drew by Her Interactive. I am your host, Tammy Tuckey, and this week we welcome voiceover artist Daniel Christensen to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad to have you. We're just having too much fun talking about Easter and the holidays and holidays in general and games. So I'm so glad to know you're also a gamer. Are you a video gamer person? Like, did you know about Nancy, prior to being a part of the games, like the computer games?
I am actually too much of a gamer, but I didn't actually know about the Nancy Drew games until I was invited to audition for one of the voiceovers. Yeah, my friend Carrie Healy was actually I think in charge of corralling the talent for the voiceover of the games for a period of time. I'm not sure if she's still doing that or not, but she was the one who invited me to come in and audition.
Did you get to audition in person, or did you just send some clips of your work?
No, yeah, Carrie invited me in, and so I came in and sort of trotted out the characters that I could conjure up based on the script that she sent me, and then they picked the ones that they thought my offerings would work for.
So I think the first game I have on your list is The Captive Curse, but there's no specific character. It's more so additional voices. So did they tell you where these voices were going to be placed? Like what the scene was, how the scene was set, so you knew how it was going to be in context?
Yeah, I think that actually the context was mostly pretty clear from just the script that she sent me. And then, I think for that game, I ended up being just mainly background characters. I think I auditioned for some old sea salt initially. Was I think the main character that I auditioned for, but so I guess somebody else did a better Scottish brogue than I did because I ended up just doing most of the anonymous pub denizens.
What's your Scottish accent sound like?
Oh gosh, it depends. I think I actually had to practice. I had to practice for that one because the sea salt had such a strong accent, and I actually had to do a lot of research for the words, which I'm not going to attempt them now because it's been so long I've absolutely forgotten them. So that one took some really specific sort of boning up. But let's see, the Scottish, the one that just that I sort of keep up my sleeve is, "Hey laddie, so I see you come prancing into my town on that road you come walking in on."
Is there another accent that you feel is like extremely hard to nail down?
Well, actually, what's funny about that is that I find so there's so much of my family that still lives in Denmark. My parents were both born and raised in Denmark. I'm actually, of 5 siblings, the only one who was born in the U.S., and I cannot do a Danish accent. And I'm not sure why. I think maybe it's because I was around it all my life. My parents still speak with accents. That it's something that I just have a lot of trouble like conjuring. I guess the best example of the difference between English and Danish that I can actually consistently do is just with my own name. So I introduce myself as Daniel Christensen, but that's a very American pronunciation of the name. And if you were to if someone in Denmark were to introduce themselves with that name, it would be Daniel Christensen.
Could you if you've played the game The Captive Curse, were you able to like at least pinpoint that it was definitely you in the game? Like, could you hear yourself?
Yeah, embarrassingly at times. Yeah.
What do you mean?
Oh, just it's the sort of classic complaint that we all have, where when you're used to hearing your own voice in your head, and then when you hear a recording of it, it's just like, oh my God, is that what I sound like? And it's I think just kind of a common reaction to the sound of your own voice when it's not resonating in your own skull.
I'm just not the only one who thinks that, thank goodness. Because I'm like, I can't even stand editing myself. It's so not, it's just like, oh gosh, it's even like seeing yourself on the screen when you're in a video or something like that. It's like, oh Lord.
Yeah. Is that what I look like?
And another one you got to do is lights, camera, curses. And so this one, you're another background voice as a gossiper. Were you doing this one at the same time that you did the captive curse simultaneously?
I think that I think those must have carried over. That if I remember correctly, that was like a late addition, and we just we recorded them at the same time, and then they just used them where it worked.
That one is a fun game, too. It's a little bit different than the regular Nancy Drew games that are usually created. I really liked it because I thought, it had an old Hollywood feel. Did you get to play that game?
I did not. I only got to I only got the one.
So the one game you do have, is this the Haunting of Castle Malloy?
Yeah.
Tell us about your character. Who'd you play?
Oh gosh, it's been so long. I don't actually recall. It was all in the script, and the characters were background.
I think they only gave you a phone character. They didn't even give you a face. You were
gosh, that's right.
Alan Payne, right?
That's right.
Yeah, so they never really gave you a face, but you had such a distinct accent for that character, and you were very posh, as they say.
Oh,
do you remember?
Oh my goodness, I'd forgotten all about Alan Payne. I just remembered the pub dwellers. I think I did like 4 or 5 voices for just people who were supposed to be in the background of the pub, and I'd completely. It's been so long since I recorded that, and so long since I played, because immediately after, once the game was printed, they sent me a copy, and I played it through 2 or 3 times. But then I think it's still on a shelf somewhere, and so actually I completely lost the fact that Alan Payne was the main character that I played.
Yeah, and he was.
I should have done my self research before I came on your show. I apologize.
No, it's okay. Don't worry about it. It was just interesting because the premise of that game in particular, and I always like to warn anybody who's listening to the podcast, is we're going to be discussing spoilers and plots of the games themselves, but for Castle Malloy in particular, there's a wedding that's supposed to happen, but the groom is missing, so Nancy calls Alan, who is a friend of the groom, and says, hey, are you guys playing a joke? And Alan says no. He's like, I don't do that.
Yeah. I wish I still had that script, because now what I really want to do is go back and see, what did I say?
It was an entertaining game, so when you finally got to play this game, you had heard yourself as other background characters, but then you were suddenly a prominent character. What did you think when you heard it?
Right. Yeah, that was fun. I don't remember the specifics, but what I remember most of all was just having a lot of fun. I mean, having read so many choose your own adventure books growing up. It was fun to get to sort of navigate one, I don't know, more in real time or with other voices than, so to speak, the ones in my head.
Did you find anything that you really preferred and loved to do in the games? Were you someone who liked to talk to the characters more often, or did you like the puzzles more?
Oh, the puzzles for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's the narrative is fun, but it's the challenge of trying to overcome the brain teasers that really that sparks joy, I guess you could say, in those games for me. I love a good puzzle. The games that I gravitate to more often than not is real-time strategy games like StarCraft 2, or I put my time in playing World of Warcraft, and it's definitely like there aren't puzzles to solve in those games, or I guess it's a different kind of puzzle, but the hurdles in the Nancy Drew games are much more of the sort of brain teaser variety, which is a whole different set of muscles to use. And I actually remember in grade school they used to put together, and I imagine they still do, little paperback books of brain teasers and like number challenges and stuff, and getting to do those to get from one end of a story to another was really fun.
Did you get a lot of feedback from friends and family? Like, were there any other individuals that you knew who had been playing the game and were like, "Oh my gosh, it's Daniel"?
No, I wish the only experience that I had like that was when I was in an introduction short film for the Seattle International Film Festival, and then I actually surprised people with my presence unannounced right before the film that they were going to see. But I didn't have a sort of network of Nancy Drew game players, unfortunately. So I didn't get to surprise anybody with my voice on their computer.
Going back to Nancy initially, like, were you introduced to her via TV show or the books before you got to partake in the computer games?
No, actually, yeah. The computer game was my first introduction. I never read mystery books growing up. Although looking back, I kind of wish that I had. I was a huge fan of fantasy books growing up, which it's not a huge leap from one to the other. But I read almost exclusively Lord of the Rings, Swiftly Tilting Planet, the Darkest Rising series. Those were my go-tos, and I mean, I still get this sort of warm glow inside me when I think about those books, because they were such a journey for me. And as I mentioned before, I read those the original Choose Your Own Adventure series, but I never made the leap to Nancy Drew or the Hardy Boys or any of the sort of mystery canon, and I think probably just because I never I just never happened upon them, and I never. It's not as though I read them and was like, oh, this is not my flavor or whatever. I just never actually got a copy of them in my hands.
Interesting. I would have thought the Hardy Boys would have been a big favorite of yours.
Yeah, and I don't know how I missed them. I mean, I can't imagine that my school library didn't have one on the shelves. But I think I guess maybe when I was looking for books, I was just so. I think once I got on the fantasy kick, that was just those were just the books that I was looking for, and so I never went into the mystery section.
Well, you have to play some of the other Nancy games because they do a really cool collaboration with the Hardy Boys in some of them, where they appear in it or they're on the phone, and it's awesome.
Oh, yay.
The girls are either Team Joe or Team Frank, so I'm Team Joe.
And aren't we all, really?
Well, some of them are Team Ned because Nancy and Ned are together, so
okay.
It's hard. You have to pick between the three of them.
Okay.
But the boys, they get to pick between Bess, George, or Nancy. So, since you've been doing the Nancy games, are you still doing voiceover, or what are you currently up to?
I never really got the Nancy Drew games were actually my only foray into voiceover work. Not out of any sort of unwillingness, but just the I guess focus of my efforts has always been stage acting. So it was absolutely a thrill to get invited to audition for it in the first place. But it wasn't. But voiceover work hasn't been like a pursuit. So yeah, that's my only credit so far.
Are you doing any projects that you'd like to promote, or a website, or social media pages?
I have absolutely nothing on the burners right now. I'm taking a acting for the camera class through a local outfit called Freehold, but I'm actually I'm not in any productions right now. So
well, hopefully soon though, Daniel. Hopefully soon.
It's absolutely fine. It's always a balance. Every audition that I walk into, it's win-win, because I'm either going to get to be in a wonderful production and work with amazing people and be creative, or I'm going to get sleep at night. So either way is fine with me. He's certainly not the only person to say this, and not the first person to say it, but I fairly recently heard a great question answer from Bryan Cranston. I think he was at an Oscars ceremony or something, or maybe it was Golden Globes, I can't recall. But someone asked him, advice that he would give to anybody who was trying to, succeed in entertainment and performance. And he, when he mentioned auditions, he said, everything changed for me when I stopped thinking of auditions as, and I'm paraphrasing here, but when he stopped thinking about auditions as a sort of like asking for something, and started treating them as a performance in and of themselves. It's just an audition is just an opportunity for you to practice your craft. And I love that. I love treating an audition like it's not an audition, it's a performance. Like, this is a chance for me to perform for these people in a room. And, the end result is going to be based on so many factors that are out of your control, that are absolutely, just out of reach for you. You don't have control over how the chemistry, of all the characters together is going to be. You don't have control over how tall they want you to be, or what look they want your character to have. So you just go in and you do your performance, and then you're done, and you walk away. And then what happens after that is as much in your control as the weather, really. So don't worry about it.
Well, Daniel, thank you so much for being on the show. I have one final question for you. So if you could describe your experience working with Her Interactive and being a part of the Nancy Drew universe using one word, what would that be?
Brilliant.